Do you ever wonder why some digital products sell like hotcakes and maybe yours barely sell no matter how low you price them? Or maybe your digital products that did well last year aren't doing as well this year. Why is this and what is the solution? I've worked with over 4,000 Etsy sellers, from new sellers to sellers doing over $8 million per year on Etsy, and I've really created a process for keeping your digital products relevant and competitive in search results without having to drop your price to 99 cents. So in this presentation, you will learn about 6 unsaturated trends of 2025 that you should be incorporating into your digital product listings this year. And if we haven't met before, my name is Dylan Jahraus. I've been on Etsy for 8 years. I've made over $1 million in profit before I ever started teaching Etsy. And then I expanded onto Amazon and Shopify. But my entire background is corporate e-commerce. So I worked for some big companies like Zappos and Zulily. And I really don't believe in tricks and hacks to making money. I believe in true business principles. So what I do is I take everything I learned from corporate e-commerce and I apply that to the Etsy platform. And that is why we tend to see very consistent results. Outside of Etsy, I'm also a mom of 2 little boys and a military spouse. And we live in Southern California, where my husband is currently stationed. And together we run a team of about 35 people where we help Etsy sellers scale their shops. We also just launched a software called Etsy last fall. And this is an Etsy SEO software that you can use to optimize your listings. So you could say that scaling on Etsy successfully is my area of expertise. All right, now let's jump into these trends for your shop. And first, I want to say that the biggest key to being ultra competitive and relevant with your digital products is to look outside of Etsy for product ideas. Now, if you are just copying what is allegedly trending on the Etsy platform, then you really are 6 to 8 months late, since Etsy is one of the last places to get trends. So instead, specifically to identify trends for digital products, we are going to focus on 2 things. The first thing is looking for trends that are outside of the Etsy platform. And then the second thing is to look for trends that are emerging outside of digital products. Yes, so that means trends in physical products. So in order to know how to find trends, those are the 2 things we want to focus on. And then I would like to categorize digital products into 2 buckets. And this is very important for the direction that you take your shop. The first bucket is functional digital products, and the second bucket is non-functional digital products. Now, if you don't like the idea of paying attention to trends, then I would recommend really focusing purely on functional digital products, because you can really get by with fewer trend integrations, right? If it's highly functional, it doesn't really matter as much what it looks like, because the strongest part of its value proposition is not the look of it. It is the solution it provides. It's that way it saves someone time or money or helps them make money. But if you're doing non-functional digital products, so these would be things like wall art or wallpapers or things that are just aesthetically pleasing, then you will really need to be forward-leaning in trends to stay in that growth mode. So let's get into these 6 trends, and then at the very end, I'm going to give you my number 1 tip to turn around a dying listing without losing your revenue history. All right, the first trend is a game changer for any digital product business. And this is to incorporate very editorial fonts into your images. Now, this could be through text overlays or through the text in the product itself. So here is a great example of what we don't want to do with our fonts. And this is an instant download. You can see they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 to 9 different fonts happening on this one image. Now, what we want to instead focus on is this, I actually call it the Kelsey font because one of our clients just made this iconic looking in her own shop. And this font is the Playfair font in Canva, and you can see what it ends up looking like. So basically you do the combination of the straight text with the italic text, and it creates this very Vogue look, and it's very editorial. It elevates your brand instantly. And this is really a great way to make your products from last year even look more relevant. It's by updating it with these types of fonts. Okay, so this would benefit from a huge overhaul, probably actually also removing half of the text, like 50% of the text, and changing the mockup completely, really simplifying simplifying this and being really clear with the value proposition. So right now we don't really know what this is for. It's really difficult to read fall of the season. We want to make sure we're using fonts that are easy to read, much more editorial, and Playfair is a great one to do this with. Now, let's say you're doing a spreadsheet. Then you might do this font through your text overlays. If it's an invitation or a program, then this would be great on the product itself. If you are doing website templates or other social media templates, this would also be great to use within the product itself. So remember, your fonts might be the most outdated thing about your listings, and font updates can make all the difference. Now, having the right font is great, but if you're missing this next trend, then you are leaving money on the table. And this is line-drawn graphics incorporated into your digital products. Let me show you what I mean. Here's an example of an invitation that looks a little bit 2020. Okay, it's the watercolor style. The fonts aren't quite elevated. You could really update this by incorporating these line drawing trends. Now, I am seeing this all over physical products, towels, wallpaper, bedding, wall art. Here is an example of one. You can see this is an invitation, Sunday brunch, very simple, and you can see the line drawing style of the graphic. Now, with this, you can do black line drawings or all one color. But I do recommend staying monochromatic with one color for the lines. Here's another example of how we are taking the bow trend and doing it in more of a line drawing format. Now you can see the bows have that detail. It looks kind of three-dimensional with the extra line in it. And then if you scroll down, you can see the line drawn. What are these? Martini glasses? And with the example of the invitation we went over, maybe the watercolor vibe really worked well before, but this time, if you're going to do florals, put a new spin on it with line drawing details, and also look at other trends that you could implement into a line drawn format. So the seashell trend, the cherry trend, the cowgirl trend, really look at combining the line drawing trend with other trends this year. And remember, black or all one color, we want this to be monochromatic. Okay, now as we talk about color, this brings me to my third trend that we need to incorporate into digital products to keep them relevant and competitive. And this is the two-tone monochromatic color schemes. For example, this is an example of what we don't want to do. We don't want to have, the bright green, the bright yellow, the bright red, primary colors, and black all together. Instead, if we wanted to improve this with this monochromatic trend, then we would do a theme of maybe a light pink background instead of the yellow with the red strawberries, maybe hot pink popsicles, and maybe some oranges or the cherries and watermelon in two other shades of red or coral. And the idea is keeping all the colors in really one section of the color wheel. Okay, so this is really helpful when it comes to digital. Here's a great example of what could be a digital product doing this. We have like the ballet pink, powder pink, Pepto-Bismol pink, hot pink, Barbie pink, right? And then the orange, right? It's all in one similar color scheme. So there's contrast, but it's very soothing on the eye because it's not as loud. Now this next trend is going to replace your borders and straight edges, and this is the squiggle trend. Now there are two variations of this trend and they will give you completely different feels. The two variations are number one, scallops, and number two, actual squiggles. And we are seeing these create the boundaries, the lines, the borders, and more in digital products. Now, I do think it's overdone on stationery like this, and I specifically see an opportunity to do this more in the template space. So some examples would be like this. This could really, really benefit from squiggles. We have a lot of hard lines here. It would make this look a lot more modern. This one as well would also benefit from some squiggle designs or scalloped. I think scalloped would be a really nice touch here. Scalloped is a little bit softer and more feminine. And here's some examples of how it's done well. So this is a great website template, right, for branding. You can see it's creating different sections with the squiggles. I also like how here they're using kind of a curved line instead of a straight line with the squiggles at the bottom. It just creates more visual interest. Here as well, you can see on this page, we have squiggles kind of throughout out. Now this is not the scallop, this is a true squiggle. And speaking of the editorial font trend where you are combining straight with italics, they're doing it right here. So very nicely done. And here's another one where it's truly the scallops versus the squiggles. Okay, so it looks more of like a bubble feel. So I see a huge opportunity to really incorporate that more into templates. This next trend is making circles look completely outdated in your digital products. And this is what you will want to swap in instead of having circles. And this is the arch. Arches instantly elevate your digital products. And I want to show you what I mean. Here is an example of arches incorporated into digital products. Beautifully done, right? Instead of the rectangle or the square, we have an arch. This is another example. You could easily have put a circle up here, but they put the arch. And this is where if you are doing like a welcome or an about section on your website in all of your different listing photos, maybe you are inserting a photo of yourself or a photo of something. Instead of doing it in the circular shape, consider doing that in the arch shape. And that alone will elevate the rest of your listing. Now, the final trend here is a print trend that you can implement in every single digital product, whether you are selling PTA flyers, wedding invitations, first birthday party invites, gift tags, or bachelorette party games. This print is going to replace the checkerboard trend from last year, and this is the gingham trend. Yes, gingham is a very classic, tried and true print that we are seeing pop up everywhere, and this is the perfect border, filler, or background for your digital products. We are seeing the gingham trend on physical products at Anthropologie, right, mixed in with other trend prints like strawberries, layered with gingham. We're seeing it in the shoelace, charm shoelace trend with shoelaces. We're seeing it with totes. We have that great woven texture, which is another trend, but nonetheless, we are seeing gingham there. And here we are seeing gingham incorporated into web design. So a couple things here. With gingham, the color and the saturation will make it look elevated versus juvenile. Even this is such a great example where we see the gingham trend coming in with Awala, which is the new Stanley. We could say it's coming into the Awalas with a very neutral, sophisticated, nicely branded look because of the color scheme and the color combinations. This is much more sophisticated feeling, an adult feeling, than something like this, right? The color that you use with your gingham and the saturation, right? This is much more saturated than something like this. This is much more subtle and low contrast. Both of those will really give a different feel and target a different customer. Okay, so you want to understand who your customer is when you are choosing color and the levels of saturation with some of these trends, because over the top can make it feel younger, and then more subtle can make it just feel elevated and sophisticated. So just really consider that when you are incorporating trends into your shop. Remember who you're targeting. Now, I promised you at the end of this, I would give you a way to turn around your dying digital products without losing the revenue history on a previously good listing and having to start over on a new listing. So what you will want to do is elevate that outdated product or image. And yes, you can actually change the product itself in the same listing. And then when someone purchases from that listing, you will give them two things. You will not just give them the new design, you will give them the new one that you improved and the original version. Why does this work? First of all, they're going to be grateful to have both options. Second of all, they are going to see the effort that you put in as a seller to improve what you previously had. And in the case that maybe they liked a customer's review photo of the previous one, they won't be disappointed if they did want the original and not the new elevated one. So overall, this is going to create more of a surprise and delight experience with unexpected value that also will show that customer that you truly care about the product and the quality, and they will see that effort. So this is a great recipe for a great review. And the important part is with your thumbnail photo, you're going to use the new, elevated, updated version of that original product. Now, of course, this is the same product. Maybe we're just updating the font, the print, maybe we're putting a scalloped edge on it. It's the same product, it's just leveled up, and you're giving them both the new and the original. And that way, that listing, maybe it was a bestseller last year or 2 years ago, and you're trying to get it to climb back up, then you are still really leveraging the history and the revenue history that will naturally help it rank higher in search, but you're also giving it a runway forward to build new momentum and to attract a new customer. Now, we just went over 6 trends that you can incorporate into your digital products, but I do have 6 more new trends that I'm happy to send over to you with the link that we will attach below. So if you would like to to access those other 6 trends that are unsaturated on Etsy, definitely click the link and check them out. And I can't emphasize enough that identifying trends before they're on the platform is really one of the most sure ways to grow and scale and beat your competition. Most Etsy sellers, and maybe this was you before this presentation, most Etsy sellers look to Etsy for ideas of what to sell. And remember, when you're doing that, you're always chasing other sellers and you're never going to be the first. And chasing is really not a business model that you want to play in. So I hope you take these trends today, start incorporating them into your listings to elevate your digital listings. And definitely, if you want the other 6 trends, go check them out. We will put them in a link for you and you can have all 12. And of course, if you'd like to connect, definitely come over to Instagram and just send me a DM and we can chat more about your shop and your listings. Or you can find me on YouTube where we have hundreds of videos and you can check out more of our free education over there. All right, thanks guys.